world of Hyrule we were introduced to in Breath of the Wild left us with many, many questions. The primary one was which timeline it sat in and how far down. We never really got an answer to that, but I believe Tears of the Kingdom gives us a plethora of evidence to a far darker and more interesting truth. The truth of the sins and failures of the goddesses. Upon the first major reveals of Tears of the Kingdom, the first lore-related questions on many players' minds are likely something along the lines of, why are the Zonai so prominent at the foundation of Hyrule, but so absent throughout the series? And what is the purpose and origin of this dark, corrupted world beneath Hyrule? Well, I believe lore hints and background elements, as well as the cyclical nature of the events of Link and Zelda's reincarnations, provide us with more than enough evidence to link the answers to both these questions. Firstly, we have the abundance of one peculiar substance in the depths: Zonite. This material, unseen or heard of before now, contains vast amounts of power, which proves versatile and inherently magical in some form. There's another material quite similar to it within this and the previous title that any player should be familiar with: luminous stone. As stated in the background lore and texts within Breath of the Wild, luminous stone is believed to contain the lingering spiritual energy of the dead, or even simply their souls. This would make their abundance around the Zora domain quite fitting if it were true, as the spiritual power of the Zora is renowned, and they are in fact the race of Hyrule that's most innately connected to magic, and most common to use it. Their spiritual power, concentrated in such abundance for many, many generations, would easily become a source of such materials in mass. But then, what does this have to do with Zonite? Well, look closely at its shape and its patterns. It cleaves angularly and has a layered, marbled pattern of multiple faded colors, including a dulled and darkened version of the same blue as luminous stone. Logically, this would have to be a metamorphic rock. A metamorphic form of luminous stone, taken over hundreds of thousands of years under insurmountable pressure. This would mean the amount of luminous stone produced and then compressed to make such a seemingly endless supply of Zonite would have to be astronomical. But then, what does that mean for the amount of soul? How absurdly huge of a civilization died down here? If the Zonai were already gone, and the depths empty by the time Ganondorf came and evolved into the Demon King against Rauru, then how long ago did this apocalypse happen? And at whose hands? What could have possibly killed them all? But then, there's the oddity of the wildlife in this cursed place. Everything looks like the alien plant life at the bottom of an ocean, and even the pale stone appears to be dry and dead coral. The signs only grow worse and worse the closer you get to the finale. On the descent through the chasm beneath Hyrule Castle, you discover the ruins of another castle, long buried with more angular architecture and a shape that feels almost familiar. And yet more Zonai architecture as you descend, even beneath this, eventually culminating in one horrible sight right before the end. This drop. I had a moment of existential horror for Hyrule's sake upon seeing this. Deeper into the depths than I had ever thought we could go, and yet seemingly infinite oblivion below. And atop it all, another Zonai pedestal peeking into this oblivion, looking exactly like the diving board you leap from just before the title card at the start of the game. Below, the source of those monstrous roots, or as much of it as we can see in the inky darkness of the void, with only sparse crimson glows in the distance, with no discernible source, meaning this oblivion reaches farther than we can fathom. The roots, glowing with demonic magic, quite literally condensed nearly into liquid form, rise up into the layers of the depths we already knew, spreading their corruption to all corners of this forgotten world. But what heinous source of power could they have, that far below, in this place we can only speculate the horrors within? Well, one would call the repeat of that specific diving board to be poetic bookending, but I see something far worse. I see another tainted cycle, not of Demise's making, but of the goddesses. The countless lost souls, entire civilizations buried, the bottom of the sea in open air beneath another entire kingdom on solid ground, all points to something we have already seen the goddesses do. And this says quite clearly that they have done it more times than we know. The Demon King has risen time and time again, accumulating power, and eventually, he always wins. When he does, and he threatens to reach the sacred realm and strike at the gods themselves, Farore, Nayru, and Din wash the world away, bury it, whatever it takes to put a new expanse between themselves and the one being that threatens them. We've seen them wash away Hyrule once before. Who's to say they wouldn't do it again, and again, as many times as it takes? This, of course, would mean iterations of Hyrule we know could be down there. That much I'm almost certain of. In the statues to the many great mines below, we see Magma, the iteration of Gorons from Twilight Princess, and this horrendous thing I can only guess is an evolutionary bridge between the Zora and the Rito. If other versions of Hyrule are buried, that would certainly explain the Zonite, as well as the evil roots. Time and again, Ganondorf has tried to taint the Deku Tree. If the world has been lost and buried repeatedly, it would only make sense that some iteration of the tree has been tainted beyond saving, and turned into a source of great evil for him to draw from. But then, what of the Zonai architecture below, and the advanced technology they had at the foundation of this version of Hyrule? That would mean, by some logic, they had an advanced society that survived the destruction of the previous version of Hyrule. That, too, is correct. You need only look to one of the most mysterious locations of one of the series' most popular titles. The ancient Zonai were the creators of the Tower of the Gods. Link fought a prototype of their technology as its boss. They've been here in the series for a long time, but never shown their faces. Hyrule has risen, struggled against demonic forces, been obliterated and buried by the goddesses, time and time again, all for their own protection against the forces of hell. Nobody's ever stated Furore, Nayru, and Din were benevolent. In fact, precedent would suggest that they are fallible and neutral entities. Din has previously chosen Ganondorf as her champion, granting him power over a fraction of the Triforce, only for it to backfire on her. The sins of the goddesses are now only thinly veiled. Hylia continues to act for the people in the form of Zelda, but her older sisters continue to sit and watch their creations toil against forces of evil that only grow stronger. Every iteration of Hyrule they bury becomes another bastion of chaos, desolation, and demonic power for a later incarnate of evil to draw power from. The deeper the goddess's sins run, the greater the demonic threat grows, and the more doomed Hyrule's fate ultimately becomes. The only thing remotely protecting them from this ever-growing evil is the hero their younger sister created. A warrior empowered by a holy sword who grows more experienced, skilled, and powerful with every incarnate, becoming a greater warrior to fight a threat that continues to fester beneath the lands and the layers of earthen bandaging that Furore, Nayru, and Din have wrapped over an infected demonic wound. We can only hope that Hylia's healing light and Link's surgical precision can eventually heal Hyrule and save them before the Demon King rises as a demon god. But it's only a theory. One that I personally find very difficult to argue against. It makes me fear for the future of this franchise. Not in its development, but in what horrors await Hyrule in the timelines to come. Well, that's enough of my rambling for now. This is the Envoy of Kairos signing out. And I hope you'll stick around for more videos. I've got a few other things like this coming up, and the return of the Mesopus region videos, so I hope you can look forward to that. Later, guys.